welcome back to the Lost Info Podcast. As always, this is keeping you awake, Jake. We are going to go into case file alien races. This will be a series. There's a lot of them. Basically, the way we're going to go about the alien races is an old KGB book. I don't know. A lot of you might have heard the story before, but a guy had became friends with another guy. Then they went to move that guy's father out of his house or clean his house or something. And he was some diplomat for Ukraine. And then when they had found this book, they asked him about it. And he had said that he knew some high ups that were during the USSR times. And so this book was supposedly for security reasons in the KGB and whatever else to inform people on the alien races and what their purpose was and what they looked like and what their ships looked like. So that's what we're going off of. There's a lot of them that I've read in other places, and so that is where we will take this episode, this case file rather. Right. So this book, like I said, was throughout a whole bunch of high-ranking diplomats in Ukraine, and the guy moved to Portugal, and they cleaned out his house. And this book was all through security departments, through Japan, China, Canada, USA, and Europe, and they updated this as they went along, I believe, until 2011. And so this guy had got updates, so it says. I mean, you can take this as it is, but basically, the first edition of this book was supposedly made in 1946, right around Roswell, I guess, or early 1947. And then the new edition was printed in 1951, and that was where they had the cover of this. And then this was updated in 1959, 1968, 71, 80, and then said to be all the way until 2011. So there's a lot in the notes too that was updated, but I'm going to just go through the races of the aliens, and we're going to make this a series because there's a lot of them. But this was supposedly the KGB handbook, so that they knew how to interact with species if they came across it in the intelligence and whatnot, and what they were going to kind of expect from them, what their agendas were from each race. So it kind of explains a lot of that stuff in this book, which is pretty interesting to me. This book was instructional manual, I guess, as far as when you came across. And then it had said in the book, in one of the pages, showing this book to anyone is forbidden. Talking about this book is forbidden, blah, blah, blah. This is only meant for duty officers and helping in alien race, no matter situation or request, choosing sides when physically amongst different alien races or during investigations, and of engaging in these races if they came across them. So the alien races, the first one is this guy behind me here. Let me move out of the way. Let's probably go the other way here. But this guy, shit, knocked a whole bunch of stuff over here. But this guy, and I'd probably mess up the pronunciation of these guys, but Gruliks, I don't know. And they are AKA the Builders. Oops. And so basically their information is they come from the constellation Sculptor. And they derive from an ancient race of reptilians that have gone extinct, apparently now. They definitely have the reptilian look about them, scaly and all that. I don't know. Let's see. They specialists at building ships and other devices needed for deep space traveling. They are also deep space travelers themselves, searching for raw materials And they can live up to 230 years. And last seen near Tokyo, Japan in 2005. I need some, but they say they've gone extinct in this book. Which, I don't know, there's probably a lot of reptilians, I would imagine. So these guys were just good at deep space travel, apparently, and building ships. And it doesn't say that they were threatening like most reptilians that I've heard of. So they're probably not that race that supposedly controls us. 230 years, I suppose that means in our time, which is a pretty long lifespan. But I guess if you're looking at like the Bible, we supposedly live 600 years. So hard to say. Last seen in Tokyo, Japan in 2005. And pretty creepy. I think that's one thing is that, that was another thing that this book had mentioned in the beginning. They had said that a lot of these illustrations were drawings originally, and then they found other pictures of aliens later down the road that were close enough to the descriptions. But it said a lot of the media coverage, where was it? It said, when this book was found, the book that led to the video and the photographs published was found in video games and everything else in movies. But this was after this book. So apparently they took it from this book and they were in on it from what it says in the notes, that they were trying to get this out to the media so that humans could get more accustomed to eventually knowing, which it said that this book was secret and don't show anybody. So I don't know, but it said that they leaked a lot of this information to video game designers and media and movies so that we could at least kind of be comfortable with there's different beings or creatures out there maybe. So it did mention that in one of the notes, which I thought was interesting. And I guess they took a big role in being as accurate as they could with the description and the names. So that's kind of cool, because I think that obviously we have a racism problem on Earth. So I could only imagine if you brought in a creature that's completely different from us, we'd probably get over our racism, but I don't know that we'd be accepting. I mean, if you saw this guy come up to you, you're probably going to be scared to no end. Now, I think that's something we have to think about. Just because they look different doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad. So it would be weird. And I don't know that it would be comfortable in the beginning, but we'd have to try to get through that in order to find out their technologies and move forward in life so that we can become more advanced and move up the chain. And the first part of that would be accepting other races and then working with them instead of believing that they're here to kill us. Obviously, I think that people should know they could kill us at any time. If they were advanced to travel the stars, they're advanced enough with weapons that if they wanted to, they could have destroyed us long ago. So that part, I think that we need to think about that if we're going to try to move forward with aliens. All right. Right. So I'm going to try to stay as on the book, the KGB book itself, and the illustrations that it had in it, so that we don't get too far off of what they're describing or what they say that these races look like. So this one here is, I think it's pronounced Kylie Tokart, is this race. Kylie Tokart. Tukart. But kind of like a goth. So it's kind of like a goth, but kind of pretty, I guess, in a alien way. This is another one. I don't know if you can see her, but so I like this one better. be honest. I can't see the top of her, but so kind of goth style, I suppose. Go back to the one with the illustration that's in the book. So Killy Tokert, I think it's Tokert. I'm sure they're pronounced different in the tongues of aliens. They come from the constellation Vela. They grow up to 2 meters high, 6 feet. They live up to 200 years in their lifespan. They can shapeshift and are very hard to detect. When they shapeshift, the only thing they cannot change is the size and color of their eyes. They are one of the oldest known races. They do abduct humans. Last seen on Earth in July of 2008. So I imagine that this race is probably one of the ones that live among us if they can shapeshift. I don't know if they keep the goth style or what, but can't change the shape of their eyes, so I'm guessing that they would probably stand out. I mean, they look kind of normal. I mean, they're probably dark. Doesn't look, I don't know if that's a glare or a pupil, but hard to detect apparently. 6 feet, so 6 feet goth style. I mean, I'm all outside I like to think outside the box. I'm that kind of guy. To me, they're pretty cute. So let's see here. Well, they do abduct humans, so I guess they might not be evil though, just because they abduct. They might just, for survival reasons, they need our reproduction or to study it or to take eggs or semen or whatever else. Maybe they just put you back. They just doesn't necessarily mean that's bad. I mean, when we look at it from aliens that might not have a reproductive system or whatever else, it might be just for survival. But it also could be for scientific purposes, studying things of that nature. Hard to say, but it does say they abduct. All right, here's these ones. These are the Palladians, and their description: they come from a solar system surrounding the Pleiades star, most precisely from the planet Era near the star Taygeta. They are associated with spiritual growth. They can grow up to 2.5 meters, about 8 foot. They practice sex cultivation. The distinct difference between their sexual expressions and their sensual emotions. Their ships are known as the beam ships. Although regular visiting Earth, they have remained mostly silent since 10,000 BC. They are also one of the oldest known races, and they continue to develop the necessary mental skills to eventually reach their goal, an even higher spiritual state. So I would say that these ones are the good ones. Obviously, you could tell that they would probably blend in. They kind of look like Swedes, I would say. You know, blonde hair, tall, lean, good looking kind of creatures. So it says that they've stayed silent, but I would imagine in our world that a lot of the races are probably not interfering and letting this play out, hoping that we grow and then they can be a part of us and kind of watching over us. I think the ones that maybe are influencing or manipulating are the ones that we've probably allowed by our governments making deals for technology and things of that nature. And so they were allowed to manipulate. Otherwise, I would imagine that's against some kind of universal laws or, you know, I'm guessing that there's rules to be had. So I'm not sure, but these ones seem like, well, I think if we become intelligent and grow to our next conscious level that we will realize, you know, that we don't need war and all that other stuff. So I think the more intelligent ones are going to be the higher spiritual evolved type creatures that stay out of any kind of conflict, because it's just not necessary, especially if you're to that higher conscious level where you could, you know, come in and out of dimensions or whatever that case may be. So these ones are the good guys from what it appears. And also pretty people. And they have human type features, so I don't think that they would really alarm anybody that wouldn't be ready for the next level of beings. Once we get to understanding that there's other creatures, it seems like these ones would be pretty easy to take in. So these guys are Kylamar Unk, and they come from the constellation Bolans. The sightings of this race on Earth are rare, and they are considered to be a mystery race. It is said that they were forbidden to visit Earth around the year 1000 BC, but they did not stop visiting Earth completely. This because of their allies, the race Matri, last seen on Earth December of 1989. So not a lot about these ones. Again, you can't really go by looks, but they don't look like they're up to any good. Probably why they were forbidden to visit Earth, because they look, I can't go by looks, but I would say that they seem like survivors, and so they'll do whatever it takes, and probably suck up resources or whatever else, kind of like we do. You know, talking about aliens, I don't think that humans would be very welcome anywhere else. What we would do if we went to a planet and saw things that we wanted. So, you know, got to also put it in perspective. Just like the United States to all these other countries that we look down and think, oh man, those third world, really we're the ones that are taking everything and they're living on means. We are not. So everything is perspective. It's easy to cast judgment and whatnot, but I'm only going on what we have in the KGB book, and they were forbidden to come to Earth, so probably a race like us, I suppose, like humans. We would definitely probably be forbidden to go to another planet, just based on what I think about people. We take what we want, and we ask questions later. And even like, you know, that's another thing. If we saw UFOs or we could track them or had the weapons, I'm pretty sure we'd shoot them down to take the technology if we haven't already done that. So just, I guess, like I said, it's all perspective. So not much for their picture on these guys. These are the Kurs, aka the gods of lands. Believed to be related to the race the Anunnaki, they come from the planet Dilemans. They are the race behind the story of Enlil and Nilil. They were directly involved on the development of the human race during the early stages. After centuries away from the Earth, they have recently returned. Their own leader is amongst the most recent visitors. They will now stay on Earth permanently. They will have an important role in the years to come. And apparently, they spend time immersed in a precious gold like liquid that presumably extends their lifespan, which is pretty interesting. They're kind of insectoid kind of looking from the little image that we get. Don't know how accurate this image is because they wasn't really sketched, and it's a close up of the eye part of it apparently, but it looks to be like insectoid type. which they say related to the Anunnaki. And I don't know, from what we know of the Anunnaki, which we'll get into that race later, they are more humanoid looking. I think they were along the line of giants, from what we think. Big, humanoid, big bearded. Um, so I don't know, but it says they're related to the race. So maybe we have a little insectoid type to us. They were behind the creation with Enlil and Nilil. So yeah, I don't know. I guess, and their leader, their own leader, which I'm guessing is the insectoid looking, was the most recent visitors. So kind of curious about the immersed in the precious gold like liquid. That's interesting. I wonder if that's kind of like gold and mercury or something. There's a lot about mercury that I'd like to know because it can float anvils, which kind of defies everything that we know as far as liquid. And there was a river of it underneath a lot of the pyramids in Mexico. It was talked about a lot in ancient times, and then now you really can't get a hold of any in any kind of mass quantities unless you have a license with a lab and everything else. So I'm thinking that there's a lot to mercury or liquid metal for that. 'Cause you can it can touch mercury can touch your skin as well. I don't know that it has anything to do with expanding your lifespan, but there's a lot to it. And apparently, this liquid gold like presumably extends their lifespan. So I think there's a lot to do with those kind of substances, liquid metal of any kind, probably have a lot of benefits and properties that we're not informed of yet because they don't want us to get too advanced. They want us reliant upon them, which when I say them, I mean the government or the elites, whatever. All right. So this one's pretty interesting. I think it's pronounced Have Hanue Chondras. Have Hanue Chondras. Now, this one, from what I'm reading here, is pretty interesting. They've come from the galaxy Sexton Dwarf SPH. They visited Earth in 934 AD in the area that we now know as Romania. And they often abduct and kill humans. They also drain and drink the blood of humans as well as the blood of animals. And they are responsible for the myths of vampires, which is very interesting because I always say if there's a story from the past that have lasted this long, it's because something of that nature happened. Now, stories can be, extended upon and changed and modified a little bit, but the original source comes from something. Now, this is pretty interesting because if you believe that there's extraterrestrials, then at one time a race like this could have visited. Now, several human governments know and accept their abductions, which they made some deal, apparently, is what I would presume. And the human bodies that they use are never returned. Last sighting, Scotland in 1996. So there was a different picture in the KGB book. But that one was as close as I could get to fit in the background here. The other one's very blurry, but it resembles similar, except for the one in the KGB book. Let's see, I'm going to try to put it on here for you, see if you can see it. It's going to be blurry. I don't know that you're going to be able to see anything on that, but they look more human than the one that I have for you to see. So they appear to be a little bit more human than that. Looks maybe like the skeleton of one, but like long wide eyes, and big mouths, and a sunken kind of nose. But yeah, I mean, I think we'd have to say that's definitely vampirous, long necks. This one doesn't really show the neck on the KGB book. But those dudes are pretty creepy, and obviously they abduct and kill humans. But I mean, if they were the ones responsible for the stories of vampires, I mean, that makes sense. They were just basically out there ravaging humans. Whether they need the blood to survive or they just like it, I would imagine it's for survival if they're drinking blood from humans and animals. But maybe it was for pleasure too. I don't know. Could have been like a fine wine to them or something. But if this is updated, like they say, last sighting in Scotland in 1996, so a little while ago. So these kind of look like just the regular grays. This race of alien or extraterrestrial is the Mazaric. They come from the constellation Camelopardalis. They come from the constellation Camel Toe. From the 1300s to the early 1900s, our calendar, they were not allowed to leave their planet by the other alien races. They are a very violent and predatory race. They are known to be allies with the Matri, that same one that's allies with the other one that we mentioned earlier. Can't remember. They grew up to 1.6 meters, which is 5 foot tall. Last seen on Earth, August of 2001. So I would say that these guys are the Greys based on the 5 foot in height, the malevolent Greys that have obviously bad agendas. Even though they weren't allowed to leave their planet by other alien races. They were last seen on Earth in August of 2001. Seems kind of weird, but I would have to say that these are the Greys that most people see, or I'm guessing there's a lot of those kind too, but they got the big eyes, black, small mouth, small nose, big head. So it's a little different in the picture from the KGB book. Pretty close though, but it was just too big to fit on the screen again. So anyway, that is the Mazaric, and they are predatory. They are not good ones. Now, my personal opinion is I think there's got to be some Greys or ones that are similar looking that are biological robots that other extraterrestrials use, because I hear a lot of different stories on Greys, and you hear Greys all the time, meaning that they're seen quite often, but they usually have different accounts of what they're doing in these stories. So it leads me to think, and some of the stories say they've seen the little men, and then when they're on the ship there was different ones. So I think that these biological robots might be like a thing of the universe used to carry out your objectives, so that you don't have to put your officers or whatever you want to call your public into harm's way. You could just have these little biological robots carry out your agendas and whatever you're trying to do, abduct people or whatever, make contact. So part of me thinks that, on a personal opinion, that some of these Greys or lookalike Greys are more biological robots used on a massive scale in the universe by other races, which only complicates the situation a little bit more, which is my opinion on that. All right, next on the list, these guys are Gruliks, and they come from the constellation Cetus. And although they are often confused with the reptilian race, they do not share anything with them except their appearance. The height is around 2 meters, which is 6 feet tall, and they can live up to 350 years. This is one of 21 races that are known to have more than 2 genders, or sexes. Well, this race has 8 different genders, and all of them can reproduce with each other. And the purpose of the visits to Earth is unknown. Last sighting near Peru in December of 2004. That blows my mind right there. Gruliks. And 8 different genders that can all reproduce with each other. That's pretty wild there. I've never heard of, I mean, I can't even think of how there would be 8 genders, but that's mind blowing right there. Yeah, I don't. So 8 genders that can all reproduce with each other. That's weird. And their purpose to Earth is unknown. But the one thing that it says, also confused with reptilian races, they only share the appearance. So maybe that they're not bad guys, but they look like the bad guys. But obviously they haven't interacted with the governments or whatever else because their purpose is unknown. So all right. Next is the messengers. Now this one I find interesting because they said in the book no image was provided, so this is what they had. But this leads me to think of deities because there's not much known about them at all. They visited Earth around every 300 years, which if we look back in time, a lot of deities were kind of, I think, roughly doing this. And their next visit is supposed to happen anytime now. And what else did it say? They do not reveal themselves, and they do not make direct contact with humans. They leave carvings, drawings, and writings on rocks, as well as symbols and historical monuments. And the ships have the shape of a teardrop and are silver in color. Now, I would have to say that these are like biblical figures and deities because this they don't make direct contact. So this might have been like the Greek gods and whatever else that you hear these stories about that live in the clouds and they don't come in direct contact. I don't know. I guess the Greek mythology and whatever else they had half-breeds, so they would have had to come in contact. I'm not sure, but these ones definitely seem like deities or religious type figures because it's more mysterious and they bring messages and they come back and check in, I guess, and leave little clues and hints, which if we read the Bible and things like that, it's more of you have to have faith in them in that sense and messages. Now, I believe that there is one creator that has created all this. So it would be the Son of God, and it would be God, a God, or Jesus Christ to some, Muhammad to others. There's a lot of them through history, and we'll do an episode or case file on deities. But I would have to say that this is the messengers for mankind, the things that we write down, and maybe they, like in their carvings and drawings and writings, they help us out a little bit, and then they disappear and come back and check in and see our development. So I find that interesting. The messengers is just what they're called, but there was no real image. So they stay pretty discreet and keep us going every 300 years. So that's interesting. And I don't know, but I would imagine it says in the next visit is supposed to happen anytime now, but I don't know when that was written, 1946 or, but if we're talking 300-year gaps, it's hard to say. Hopefully we get a new messenger that can right this ship a little bit. All right, next. This race is the Ramey, and they come from Capella constellation. Known to be a very peaceful race, they tried to coexist with humans. They created the Mayan civilization. by placing humans from different places on Earth in South America. They are a race of scientists. They taught the Mayans about astronomy and quote unquote time. They left Earth when the Mayans were at their highest splendor. After that, the Mayans started the well known blood sacrifices in their honor. So, not that they told them to do it, but they probably wanted them to return and was thinking of any way they could get them to come back. And so, maybe that's where they started that whole ritual of blood sacrifices. The race has been on Earth many times after that, and the last sighting is Bora Bora in 2001. So, see, I think that this would be, I love the Mayan culture, but I would think that this is a race that we definitely need to come back and help us advance. They seem to be peaceful, which means that they're probably intelligent. I would have to say the majority of races out there that are more advanced are going to be peaceful, because it's just, you're not trying to evolve with physical means and manipulation. It would be more spiritual and just living. So I would have to say that we definitely, and they're scientists, so they were pretty smart on things, and obviously that we knew a lot about astronomy. The Mayans, anyway. And so, yeah, I would have to say this race would probably help us out if they came back, and if we didn't try to kill them and whatnot. But they would probably help us out in advance. So this is a pretty cool race here of extraterrestrials. So this is next. These guys also look like a gray type. These are the Movidian Kaifeks. Movidian Kaifek, aka the Shining Ones. They come from the constellation Vulpecula. They have met with at least 2 USA presidents, as well as with USSR and now Russian leaders and some high-ranking officials. They supply limited amounts of their technology to humans in exchange for the freedom to conduct abductions. They do not involve other alien races with this process. So again, when I said the ones that have made treaties or contracts or whatever with our governments, these were the ones that I think gave us technology, apparently, for the freedom to abduct, so with their approval. And these ones are probably ones that you see quite often. These ones, I don't know that these ones would be the biological ones that I'm talking about. These guys seem to have a plan in place. They had a big role in the Siberian and Tibetan culture. They still have bases in those areas hidden in the north face of the mountains. They have colonized over 40 planets outside of our solar system so far. So these guys seem to be on a mission. Definitely, they've colonized 40 planets. They have to have pretty good technology in order. Well, I don't know. They might not need a lot to survive, or they're pretty durable in any climate, maybe. But to colonize 40 planets, you're on a mission to save your race in any catastrophe. And then being the ones that have actually met with US presidents and Russian leaders in order to get to this planet, I would assume that you're probably making plans to colonize this one once we screw ourselves over, or at least coexist with us, maybe. The freedom to conduct abductions would lead me to think maybe for the reproductive stuff, or they just have a bigger plan that we're not really aware of. But if they're going to meet with presidents and leaders and make themselves known, and as we know of, colonize 40 planets, they must have a plan in place, a pretty good one. But the Siberian and Tibetan culture, they played a big role in that. I would like to think of those people as high spirituality and evolved conscious, be able to meditate and things like that. So that part doesn't really fit in with that agenda. Not sure. But if they're trading humans technology, they would have to know that eventually we would get good weapons. So it's either they're waiting for us to kill ourselves and take over our planet, or probably coexist with us on our planet, is what would lead me to think. But these ones seem to have a plan if they're the ones that met with our leaders and 40 planets outside of our solar system. So these guys are on a mission for sure. All right, next. These guys look pretty interesting. Rack. I mean, they got like some tentacles coming off and kind of insectoid, but humanoid with tentacles. Pretty interesting looking. Of the 58 races described in this KGB book, this is the race that least visited Earth that we know of so far, only 5 times. They visited the area that we know now as the Middle East, and that created the belief in the jinn or genies in Islamic mythology. According to some Muslim scholars, they inhabit an unseen world in a dimension beyond the existing dimensions of our universe. According to reports from other alien races, they stopped visiting Earth because their immune system could not cope with Earth's fauna and flora. Last recorded visit, 712 AD. So, again, these stories and things that are passed on from generation to generation, and what we know of as the jinn or genies, which is interesting. I wonder if they came to, jinn and genies are a little different, but genies granted wishes. I don't know. Which is interesting. They haven't really came that much that we know of, but they inhabit an unseen world in a dimension beyond the existing dimensions of our universe. Which, that's kind of puzzling to me too, because I thought all the dimensions were within the universe itself, but beyond the existing dimensions of our universe. That's pretty mind-blowing as well. So visited the area of the Middle East, and they're a very interesting race. Last recorded visit, 712 AD. The Rack. These dudes seem pretty wild. I don't know, if you're dimension traveling beyond this universe, I don't think you're going to be too concerned with Earth or what's going on here either. So they might have just came in and was like, hey, this is pretty new race of beings, and visit us, just probably scared us a little, and that's where we came with the jinn. And then some probably got some help on a couple questions, and they were called genies or whatever, because they came out of nowhere and appeared out of a bottle, but it was really just dimension jumping. So that's just my opinion how that all worked out, but apparently they didn't visit much, and obviously probably not too concerned with Earth. If you're jumping dimensions outside of this universe, you got a lot more to do than mess around with our retarded selves. All right, next. All right, the next race, the Invisibles. Obviously, it can be hard for an image. It says no image available, but they just put a shadowy figure, I guess. Obviously, they're going to be kind of dangerous if you can't see them. This race is known to have been, quote unquote, seen near high security areas. They are almost completely invisible to the naked eye. Both the USA and the Russian military have developed technology that allows them to track them down on radar, just their ships. Excuse me. Three things are known about this race. They leave a sour smell when they are near. When they are near windows, you can quote unquote see the reflection as a smudged like figure. Have been caught on CCTV footage. When many dogs or only one start barking with no apparent reason, it is possible that they are nearby. They come from the constellation Mensa, and their purpose of presence is also unknown. So this one's kind of weird because the Russian and US military developed technology to see them, which could be like, or their ships, I suppose. Near high security areas, we've seen a lot and heard a lot of stories of military bases with like nukes and whatever else. Might be just trying to check in and see what our capabilities are or whatnot. Curious, have been caught on CCTV footage. Curious to see that footage. So I guess in the reflections, you can see them as smudged figures. And then they smell like shit apparently when they're nearby, and or sour is the more descriptive word, but sour, shitty smell, I would say, and then almost completely invisible to the naked eye. So these ones are kind of creepy because you just wouldn't really know unless you had a reflection somewhere. So that's kind of weird. Called the Invisibles. All right. Not much for the image. This is also another one of those. These ones are more technology that makes them invisible. So I don't think there's much to see on these ones as far as what they look like if you're watching this episode. Case file, rather. Almaholic Strat 163 is what they're called. Almaholic Strat 163. They were forced to leave Earth after losing a battle against reptoids in ancient India. That date was unknown, which they had been visiting for around 200 years. They have resumed their visits to Earth in 1948. Technologically, this is a very advanced race. Their ships are often invisible to radar and the human eye. They also wear some sort of clothing that makes them invisible as well. Supposedly, they come from Jupiter or from one of Jupiter's moons. Last sighting, Portugal, May 2005. So, I don't know how that's last sighting, but maybe one had its suit off or something, or took off its cloaking device. I don't know. When it says last sighting and it's invisible to radar and human eye, and their clothing makes them invisible, that would be kind of hard. And this is the image that they give. Don't even really know what to make of that. Tall, lanky, maybe creatures without their invisible suit. But interesting little thing in the notes. Forced to leave Earth after losing a battle with the reptoids in ancient India. I mean, who enforces that, really? You know, wonder if there is like some board, universal galactic board or council or something that enforces this stuff. But then they come back in 1948, right after Roswell, all that good stuff. Maybe also trading with technology. Doesn't really say. Excuse me. It doesn't really say their purpose. Last sighting Portugal, May 2005. All right. So this next race, they're kind of cute looking. The Ayanana. Nana. They didn't. Sorry about that. They have long eyes, almond eyes. Apparently, they look like they're smaller. It doesn't really say their size. The members of this race are the cause of why humans coined the term Martians. They come from the constellation Gemini. They have permanent bases on Mars for thousands of years where they mine some sort of gold-like material. First recorded visit to Earth was 1235 BC in Japan. And last sighting, Madagascar, 2003. They're kind of cute little guys. I didn't really say that their size. Let's see. There was another picture I'm going to grab here. I think we even made carvings of them. So again, I think it said something about the Galactic Federation. So I'm guessing that that's kind of what the council is, the Galactic Federation. But apparently we have, hold on here, I'll pull this up for you. Let's see here. We've had some kind of sculpture of these little guys. Where is it? Here we go. So it's too big for the thing, but we've had a sculpture of these guys, same kind of head as before, but there was a little carving of them. So I don't know. It looks old, but it doesn't really say anything about the carving itself. But to me, they're kind of cute. They're the little Martians that we know of from Mars. And they like to mine for gold, so they're busy little fellas. It might have been a carving from Japan, I guess, if that's what we saw. 1235 BC in Japan was their first recorded visit, and yeah, little Martians, the actual Martians. All right, so that I think is a good start on the 58 races in the KGB book. Again, if you'd like to help us out, you can go to spectra.com, go in, shop for any CBD products that you would like. They have one of the most extensive pain patches on the market. When you check out, type in TLI 15 and you'll get an additional 15% off. It helps us out. Or you can go on the show notes below, go to our store, buy a t-shirt or a hoodie or something like that. That also helps us out. And soon we will have a place where you can give a donation on thelostinfo.com. If you'd like any questions about the races of aliens, you can contact us at thelostinfopodcast@gmail.com. Get involved with the conversation that I believe within the next 5 to 10 years, we will be faced with meeting a race of extraterrestrials, and maybe, if not all of them at once, that we know of, or at least informed that they exist. So I think that time is coming in our current world, or we just destroy ourselves before then. I don't know. But either way, obviously any help for the show, that'd be great. Otherwise, until next time on the series of alien races, this is Keeping You Awake, Jake. I'm out of here.